Welcome to Feedback Loop, over-the-shoulder feedback walkthroughs designed to close the loop in copy, design, positioning, and more. Brought to you by Aderim and ScaleMath. So this is the first episode of a new format, and we're probably going to play around with how we do these, introducing video in some and introducing people appearing on screen, multiple people being included in the call when we do it. But for this first one, we're going to be going through a specific email, which is actually from Aderim, which is one of the companies that this show is brought to you by. We're going to go through it from the beginning, and we're going to basically pick apart everything from the copy to the targeting to how the email that this was sent to, which I'm going to have to hide for the purposes of this video, was found, so that we can basically tackle it with full context. So first of all, the first thing that stands out is that just after the introduction, which is greetings, which we'll get onto the actual introduction a little bit later and the actual greeting itself being greetings in a bit, there's a comma which indicates to me that somebody was automating this in a way and they didn't have all the data and they sent it even though they didn't have a fallback or liquid templating that could have caught this and at least replaced it with something a little bit less awkward than having a blank space. As for the greeting itself, I think greetings is a little bit oddly formal and not really something that someone who's actually a native English speaker would say in an email. I've not come across it before. I've also never sent an email starting with greetings. So what I would start it with, assuming I don't know the name, I would start it with hi there or hey there if you want to be more friendly. And that was the context of the brand, is to be a little bit more conversational. However, I would typically for these types of emails, because people are already inundated by the number they receive, I would basically introduce a manual step where if there is no name, then you don't send the email and you basically draft it in your email client as opposed to just sending it with the fallback, because it's quite obvious to people, especially if you're reaching out to big companies. They're going to be like, okay, I'm not really being contacted by somebody that cares. They didn't put the effort. And people actually still care about the effort and attention to detail. And a lot of companies that care about effort and attention to detail, maybe that's not the type of company that you want to reach, but I'm assuming, and based on my understanding of Aderim and the brand, that is the case. So next thing that I'm going to say before we get onto the rest of the body of the email, which actually was the second thing I noticed. So the greetings and then the gap with a space where there was supposed to be a variable, that was the first thing I noticed because my eyes just immediately jumped to that there. The second thing I noticed is the actual from email being aderim.pro and the icon not being set up as to have an actual human's picture. So it looks to me immediately right off the bat like this is a spam email or even potentially a scam that's trying to impersonate the company. And the first thing I do when I get an email that looks to me not to be from the brand's primary domain is open it in incognito and see whether or not the site actually loads. And it looks like it does, which is great, a good start. When I actually did it before this recording, it didn't redirect. So that's a good start. It should redirect. Whether or not .pro is the right one to use, and depending on the type of outreach, although this one is going to be to some extent a non-issue, I would try to steer clear from using secondary domains whenever possible, depending on the type of outreach. If this really is pure cold outreach, then maybe it's unavoidable and you have to use a secondary domain. If it is unavoidable and you have to use a secondary domain because you're not qualifying the people that you're reaching out to, then I would try to use one that's a little bit less obvious to be a secondary domain for the purpose of sending huge amounts of cold email, such as .co.uk, such as .co, such as .org, as opposed to the primary domain in this case is .io. If the primary domain were .com, then .io would be a fantastic one to use for this. .pro just is one of the ones which catches people's eyes as typically one that people use to impersonate brands. So it's one I would steer clear from. The next thing is the email that this was sent to. So the actual address, which I'm going to have to hide in this video. But basically, my question comes from, where did they get this email? Because this email did not sign up for the service. However, the copy insinuates that email address signed up for an account, which as far as I'm aware, it did not at any point sign up for an account. So unless I'm missing something and this email did sign up for an account ages ago and they're just sending the targeting is just to contact old users of the platform, even then it's confusing and it should be worded in that way because to me, the segmentation is so vague that even though I may have signed up with this email years ago to the platform and I'm now getting a follow-up email, it's not clear to me why I'm receiving this email, which immediately throws off my senses of what is going on here. Heading down to the footer, it's quite obvious to see that there's a couple of issues here. The logo placement is just not ideal, to say the least. I'm going to also switch over to an email client in dark mode to prove a point which a lot of people don't consider, which is that now the majority of technical people use dark mode. So you should be testing your emails in a dark mode email client. And in a dark mode email client, this is what happens to the logo. It's basically essentially almost invisible, except for the one arrow, which again, at least to me as a prospect, just damages the entire credibility of the email and me even wanting to take it seriously, regardless of how interested I am in the offer, in what's being said, or whether or not I want to reply. Again, coming back down to the footer, there's like if you look in this email client, you can see there's like a full stop at the very end of the email. Again, these are all things that are credibility markers, which when people receive a lot of email, it takes them 4 seconds to look at an email and make the 10 judgments that I've just made. It's taking me longer to talk through them all and why they're important, but it literally takes seconds for somebody to make these judgments. So yeah, footer, the confidentiality notice, it's been covered and widely documented that this is not something that has any legal grounds in including. You're sending an email, so you are, especially when you're sending an email to somebody outside the organization, including this does absolutely nothing. So again, I would exclude it and I would just make the footer very simple. Include the company name. I would remove the image. We found that to improve deliverability when you don't have images, especially for a first email. Then the next thing I'll look at is, okay, great, there's no tracking link on this. All right, and now let's go back to the copy itself. Hey, Alex, firstly, thank you for signing up to Adorim and starting your journey to speed up design projects. I wanted to check in to see how you've been experiencing the platform and if we can help you get the max value out of the platform for your web-based projects. Do you have a specific project you need assistance with? You need assistance with? Okay, couple of things. First line, I don't actually hate it. It's very to the point. So thank you for signing up for Adorim and starting your journey to speed up design projects. I'd probably tweak it slightly and be... Hey, Alex, thanks for signing up for Adorim. Excited for you to So I'm just doing this quickly for the sake of the episode. I'm sure I could toy around with dozens of ideas within an hour, but we obviously don't want this episode to be an hour long. So what I'd simplify it to is, hey, Alex, first off, thanks for signing up to Adorim. Thanks for signing up for Adorim. I would leave it to 4. Excited for you to start speeding up your design projects. Yep. Then how you've been experiencing the platform is grammatically not wrong, but it almost sends, when you read it, it just doesn't flow off the tongue. And I know that these people aren't reading emails out loud when they receive them, but a very good sense check for all copy actually is read it out loud. And if it doesn't flow off of the tongue, then it probably needs edits to simplify it, to reword it, to reduce the number of clauses, whatever it may be. And in this case, this to me just doesn't flow off the tongue. I wanted to check in to see how you've been experiencing the platform. So one of the other things that I would do with this type of email, assuming it is being sent to users, which is what the copy was originally insinuating, even though I can't verify that just based on the email it was sent to, because I don't know if it matches an account that was created, is don't try to create this facade that it isn't an automated email, especially if you're emailing users. They don't actually care if it's an automated email. If this is actually going back to the CEO and he's going to reply and help and give me one-on-one support because he cares, then I don't care if this was an initially automated email, because I know, even if he doesn't say it, that it's automated. I would actually hate it more if they try to make the email look not automated, as opposed to just being straight up about it. So I would try something like this. First off, thanks for signing up for Adorim. Excited for you to start speeding up your design projects. Just wanted to send over a quick note to see whether there's anything I'd be able to help with. Hey, Alex, first off, thanks for signing up for Adorim. Excited for you to start speeding up your design projects. Just wanted to send over a quick note to see whether there's anything I'd be able to help with. So this is not specific enough to me, whether there's any way we'd be able to help you get more value out of Adorim for your creative, for your team. So compare that to, I wanted to check in to see how you've been experiencing the platform and if we can help you get the max value out of the platform for your web-based projects. It repeats platform in the span of about 8 words twice, and it just, the whole thing is just way too wordy to me, and it's a bit of a switch off. This is optional. I think a lot of people are against it. Drift is actually the company that first pioneered this with Dave Gerhardt's email, where they were upfront that the email is automated, but they are actually replying personally to every single email. And it was very successful for them at the time. Again, I don't think they still do it, but at the time as an early stage company, it worked really well. So that leaves us with, hey, Alex, first off, thanks for signing up for Adorim. Excited for you to start speeding up your design projects. Just wanted to send over a quick note to see whether there's any way we'd be able to help you get more value out of Adorim for your team. Note, this is an automated email, but I do read and reply to every response I receive. Do you have a specific project that you need assistance with? Okay, so this to me, again, is a little bit like the previous line we just removed. It's so vague. What is a specific project that you need assistance with? Are you helping them with the WordPress development of a project that they're doing in Adorim? I assume no. So again, it's not exactly the approach that I would take. So just to preface, this is again going to be one way of doing things, which is one of the ones that comes to mind within the span of this recording. Obviously, with more context and more background behind what we're trying to achieve with this email, I'll come up with dozens of variations within an hour or so. But what I would do here is I would say, how are you finding How have you been getting on with your latest design project? Something like this is what I would say. Make it super easy to give a response. Actually, I don't find this that easy to give a response, so I'd probably go with either how have you been getting on with your latest design project, or are you currently using Atarim on a project that's already underway? Because this second question is a yes or no answer. So it takes a split second for somebody to decide whether to respond. So as opposed to how have you been getting on with your latest design project, are you currently using Atarim on a project that's already underway? And again, the do you have a specific project that you need assistance with? Way too vague. Then I don't know if I removed it, but if I don't think there was a sign off like best or anything. So that we're going to add now. There's not much that I can probably do within the Chrome visual editing extension that I'm using. But for now, I'm going to just do what I can, which is so we remove that confidentiality notice. We bring the footer a bit more together. I would, if we want to include the title, so the fact that Vito is founder and CEO or co-founder and CEO, we can do that as well. I can bring it here, make that a slightly smaller font, and have co-founder and CEO. Oops, we should decapitalize that. Actually, it looked better capitalized, I would say. No, uncapitalized. Book a meeting with Vito. The address in the footer on a one-on-one, I don't think is necessary. Again, if you are sending this to users as a sales enablement email, if not, or even if you are, okay, if you are including it, then I would just say this should be as small text as this. It should not be larger. So if we're going to bring this here, it should be about that. That just creates the information hierarchy that you want in a cold email or even in a warm email to a user. That's fine. Then the book a meeting link, what I would do is I would bring it under the signature. So here we have what I would say is 75% of the way there in terms of improving it to a really good point. Again, the final 25% is a matter of spending another 15 minutes without having to talk through what you're doing. But we ended up with a pretty good result. The only other things that we can actually change for the purposes of this thing is the subject line, and then also the fact that there's no image, and also the fact that the domain that's used, the TLD, is not a preferable one for outreach. There may not be an option to that, which is unfortunate, in which case just move on. And the final thing we're just going to double check, which I already did before, is that it passes the SPF, DKIM, and DMARC authentication. So we're all good there. In terms of subject line, I would probably go with, actually this we can do here. I would probably not do the make it look like a reply, because again, this, for people who are savvy, actually pisses people off so much that they will just mark the email as spam, even if they would have otherwise responded to it. And we've run tests with it on a large scale. People just dislike people that try to game the system and make things look like a reply when it's obviously not a reply to an email that was sent. So the workaround I would do is I would just do something like getting started with Atarim. What I will add is I don't know the full context of the targeting of this email, which I mentioned a couple of times already now, because as far as I know, it wasn't a user, but we based this off of the original copy. It was as if it was for a user outreach email for somebody that did sign up actually to the platform, but probably just hasn't used it, hasn't created a project yet. In which case, getting started with Atarim is a good example of a baseline that I would run as a test. A second one would be something like need help with Atarim. There's tons of variations here that you can test, and I would probably continuously test the subject line of these, especially if you're sending them to users after they sign up, let's say a week or two after they sign up if they haven't created a project. All right, so I don't want this to drag on. That's it for the first episode of Feedback Loop. I am going to be doing a ton more of these on everything from design, copy, positioning, you name it, we're going to do it. If you have any suggestions, feel free to just email me, alex@scalemath.com. And once again, thank you to both ScaleMath and Atarim, as well as Atarim 2 times for actually being the feature for this episode.